So I think it's pretty clear that you were duped, everybody else online was duped, the wiki readers were duped, TikTok commenters were duped, everybody in the YouTube comments of power scaling videos were duped, everybody was duped, and you're just going to have to cope with that because a lot of people who scale comics don't actually read comics and then spread that misinformation to other people. And then the people who actually do read comics, who are older like me, come around and they just can't believe the things that are being said. You know, I've heard arguments that Krypton was never Superman's original home and then he lived somewhere else. And then I saw like hundreds and hundreds of comments and likes and people just defending that because it was a power scaler super user who's really popular who said that. And he actually believes it because he's crazy. And then just because he said it, he got a whole bunch of other people to agree with him. And that is the same thing that parallels into all of the other discussions about comics and mythology and lore. And it's why the art and the illustration and the mythology of comics and the story of a DC and Marvel have been ruined by the power scaling community to such a point that you can't recognize the stories anymore. They don't mean anything to anybody. They're just like things for you to use online to get views and comments and social status. So I'm just going to lie about this. And yeah, I heard it's kind of cool to lie about that. I heard there's a lot of people who believe this misinformation. So I'm going to keep posting it. And anybody who posts anything to the contrary, I'm just going to delete your comments because I'm a sociopath who has no ethics and morals and no shame button in their brain. So that's 99% of power scaling, how it goes. And it's why you shouldn't be listening to wikis or other forums or anything like that without you going to read it yourself. Or you find other content creators who actually read off the panels for you and don't just give their fan theory and revise what the truth means and revise what the word lie means, because that's what a lot of power scalers do in the debating community. They are moral inobjectiveness, profoundly supporting that, which means that they believe that information isn't objective and they're allowed to change definitions without telling you that. So when you're debating somebody, when you're watching a content creator talk about comic books, and I'm not saying everybody, I'm only saying the power scalers who are really bad. So when they say, no, I'm not lying, why I would never lie to you, you can totally trust me. Well, what they've done in their contained little space is revise and change the definition of lie to mean the truth. And when you catch them on that, when you call them on that, they will tell you that they are not an objectivist, which means they believe that all data can be changed and nothing is objective, everything is subjective. So they're allowed to present lies to you as truth. And they are allowed to change the definition of truth to be a lie and change the definition of lie to be truth, and they don't want to tell you that. So these are the people that you are listening to. They purposely do that because they think you're stupid. They think you don't read philosophy books. They think you don't read the comics, so they could say whatever they want and get away with it. You see this on all of those versus battles, TikTok edits, the who's stronger edits that you see everywhere. They don't read anything. They're just going off the hype train. You see thousands and thousands of comments, 35,000 likes, 50,000 likes, based on misinformation. And you know what? It's fine if you have your opinion, but like you're flashing things online that say like strength and speed and IQ and battle experience. And if all of those things are objectively like in favor of the other side of what that person is saying, well, then they're lying to you because they never actually read it, and they're presenting their opinions to you as if they're truth without telling you that. And that's what you have to do if you care about any of this. If you care about books and movies and art and stories and illustrations and the things people take years and years to craft for you, only to be chucked out by like some kid or some 20-year-old on YouTube who like has found like the secret to how to get views, which I'll tell you what the secret is. It's lie, cheat, steal, manipulate, and use YouTube promote. And that's just like the bare essentials of what anybody can do. Find the hype train, find which characters people don't like, and then say, yeah, those characters are stupid, they suck, they're not that powerful, blah, blah. I'm going to make 10 videos on this, and you'll get like 100,000 views. That's just how it goes. And then you have like the two people like who actually care about this, which me being one of them, and we'll struggle for 200 or 300 views. We'll get like 20 likes on our video debunking that other person, which is funny because online, on Reddit, on other pages, like when somebody like absolutely cripples another person with a debunk and like completely ostracizes them, completely ousts them, completely dismantles everything that they said was a lie, usually that person is the one who gets like 100,000 views, and it's the other person who like fades away and doesn't like stay on YouTube. But for some reason, when it comes to comic books and mythology in general, it's the complete opposite. The liars and the frauds get more, and we, the debunkers, get less. We're thumbed down because they are more than happy to make 10 different alts and fraudulently report you, and then YouTube puts you in like YouTube jail. So none of your views can go past like 300 views. Doesn't matter what your thumbnails look like. Doesn't matter what content you're making, the quality of your content. You're speaking to an audience and they care about what you're saying. Doesn't matter, because there's so many other alts that are fraudulently reporting you on a daily basis that YouTube keeps you in that jail and you can't get out. And that's what happened to my YouTube. So that's why I'm trying to make these longer form videos to try to break the algorithm and get me out of that. Because art to me is important. And I love the mythology, and I'm a writer myself. I want to do my own comics. I want to do those other things. I want to, write things to inspire other people. I want to grind my ass off for years to make a comic book for somebody that a lot of people enjoy. And then what the power scaling community would do in response to that is just chuck out all of that, all of the story, all of the meaning behind it, the social impact of what I was trying to make it to be. Just chuck that out, lie about it. You'll get 100,000 views in an instant, and you'll become a super sensation on TikTok, and you just keep doing the same edit over and over and over, flashing lights, strobe effect, really fast, lazy edits on it, and you'll become popular. That's just the reality that we live in. And it's just the old guy here making fun of the younger generation for just not caring about all this stuff. And it's sad because I do see a lot of other people in the younger generation who do care, but it's usually the power scalers, the power scaling community, the debating community in general that has completely ruined everything. All of the meaning of comics and mythology, books, movies, TV shows, magazines, manga, everything you could think of has been completely ruined in story by these people because they just don't care about that stuff. They just want to be a social alpha. They want to be viewed as something that's important to other people, some kind of, mecca of information, a plethora of information. Come to me for my information. And it's just something we have to deal with, and something I've been dealing with for a long time. And I like to make these podcast videos now just for myself, just to feel better about it. I'm retired from the debating thing now, and I don't do the one-on-ones with a judge anymore. So I'd like to just, vent my feelings and use all of you as my therapist. So that's what I'm going to do. So on this topic of the Great Darkness with Incarnate number 4, the entire comic book society had completely changed. But the problem is there's only like 3 people left in the entire world who actually read comics and understand the tropes behind how writers write comics, which is an ideal that gets chucked out by certain forums, certain other scalers. They don't really care about how a book is set up, how it crescendos at the end and you find out the reveal of the truth. The villain wasn't actually doing this. He was actually this guy. Those are what I call social cues. Like, for example, in Incarnate number 4, you see Dr. Multiverse, who is giving this exposition about the cosmology, and in this exposition, she just gets literally everything wrong, at least according to the prior DC Comics series. Like, everything in this is wrong. Mandrake wasn't the first one corrupted by anything, because the Anti-Monitor in the same exposition was said to have been corrupted as well. Well, the Anti-Monitor came before Mandrake, so that is wrong. Good usually doesn't make deals with evil. God is not going to make a deal with the personification of evil just to keep everything safe. I think if God were good, it would fight that great darkness. And if we jump back to Alan Moore's American Gothic, And I'm sure you've seen this image a few times over the years. And it was an exposition in Incarnate 4, which came out in, 2020, something like that. And it was kind of re-edited and recopied into that, but it's actually a reference to the Alan Moore American Gothic series, where the Great Darkness came into existence for the first time for us as readers when we first got to see it. So if you zoom in, this is what the panel says. Where recently the war between light and darkness has evolved into a tense embrace, an invocation at arm's length of the eternal conflict and essential unity of good and evil. A realm that man, in the confusion of his post-existence, populates with all the boiling hells and heavenly gardens that he expects as his eternal reward. Okay, so you've seen that image multiple times, I'm sure. But have you seen the part of the scan that was actually cropped off? So from the exact same page, I'm sure that you've never seen this. I am so sure that 99.9% of anybody even watching this right now has never actually zoomed in on any of these panels that were shown on any of the Versus Battle forums, on any TikTok comment links or anything like that. So it says, except for the womb. So what this panel is saying is that the Great Darkness is able to transcend and merge with pretty much everything in existence. And then it gives us what the limitations are for the Great Darkness. And it says, except for the womb, where all the memories of suffering and triumph are erased and the slate of each soul wiped clean in preparation for its next voyage back into the realms of earthly illusion. What does that even mean? What are you talking about? What does that have to do with anything? Well, it's telling you what the limits are. That the Great Darkness is all-encompassing except for the womb, except for something exterior that contains it. Where have we heard something like this before? Well, we've heard something like this before from Grant Morrison talking about the Overvoid. So this is from the guidebook, the Absolute Edition of the Multiversity, which came out in late 2022, December of 2022, I believe. So it says, from here, a more rarefied and pure monad can rise to higher realms of abstract idea if it's not caught up in limbo first and ultimately return to the overmind, which means the overvoid, possibly to eventually become a recycled idea or a rebooted character. There is even a direct shortcut along the length of the siphon that enables worlds considered to be ill-conceived, derivative, and otherwise detrimental to the cohesion of the orrery to return directly to the source. Go straight to jail. Do not pass go. So this is a parallel, a literal parallel between what the limits are for the Great Darkness. Well, it can't go to where the womb is. It can't go to the container, the ultimate container, where everything is erased and the slate of everything is wiped clean in preparation for its next voyage back into the realms of earthly illusion. That's the exact same thing that Grant says that the Overvoid is. Okay, so the Overvoid takes these ideas and erases them, and then for some other reason unknown to everybody, it will spit that thing back out in some different or revised or rebooted or recycled idea way back into existence. So that is exactly the same parallel between each other. It's the same allegory. It's the same illusionary text. It's the same everything, except for the womb, where all the memories or sufferings and triumph are erased and then spit back out into the earthly illusionary realms, which means existence. And then Grant also says that it's going to ultimately return to the overmind, possibly to eventually become a recycled idea or rebooted character. That's exactly the same thing, except on a meta level. So the limits for the Great Darkness were always that it could never get beyond existence. The Great Darkness was always part of existence. It didn't come from past the womb. It didn't come from beyond the overmind. Its limitation, except for the womb, where all memories of suffering and triumph are erased. So the limits right there were explained in the original Alan Moore comic. So when you have other content scalers who disregard the original Great Darkness and how it operated, throw these scans at them and let them know that they should do a little bit more research on these topics and try not to say such profound statements that manipulate and change the narrative of the comic books that we read, because I'm not into the personal interpretation of things. I like to listen to the comics and the guidebooks as they're written first, and then if that's a vague thing and we don't really understand what it means, then we can go to the authors and the editors and the illustrators and ask them, what did they mean by this? And then we can get more clarification. That's how it works. So in Incarnate number 4, it shifted the entire society of comic books, and people thought that the Great Darkness was beyond the Overvoid, because a lot of people assumed that the Overvoid was the light, except they never read DC Comics to know that Tempus Fuginaut protects the light, even though he was sent by lower things than the Overvoid, which were the Nil Monitors, to protect and oversight everything in the absence of the Nil Monitors. So the Nil Monitors were apparently supposed to grant oversight over the Overvoid. No, but that is what a lot of forums and a lot of scalers say. So the light was never the Overvoid. There's no implication anywhere that it was the Overvoid. The Overvoid, it wasn't sentient for very long. It did wake up, which is part of a theme from the Maharishi school of transcendental meditation, which is his own viewpoint, and it kind of mirrors the absolute void in the Kabbalah, which Grant said all of this is actually based on. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that the Overvoid was never the light. Even Dark Crisis 7 says that the light of creation merged with the Speed Force, and Dr. Light absorbed the light. And you can see that the light is clearly illustrated in these comic books as the light around creations. It's the light around universes and the other Earths that merged from the greater omniverse into the area of the local 52. Every one of them has their little own light around it. So Dr. Multiverse did not absorb the Overvoid, which is hilarious to me, because apparently, according to this lore, the Great Darkness contained the Overvoid, and then the Overvoid contained the Sphere of Existence, and the Great Darkness could not bypass the Overvoid. It had to make a wormhole into existence, and Pariah had to open up the Great Darkness had to use the Empty Hand to open up the crack, which was like a doorway from the Great Darkness, bypassing the Overvoid, if you consider it the light, and then that would open a door in existence for the Great Darkness to come through, because it just couldn't lopside itself through the Overvoid for some reason, which is hilarious to me, because a lot of the scalers completely ignored the comics. A lot of the forums out there completely ignored the comics, blatantly showing you this, that the Great Darkness, being above the Overvoid, could not go through the Overvoid, so it needed the crack, which was found in Dr. Multiverse, and then it was removed by Darkseid, and then stabbed into the Empty Hand, and then the Empty Hand used that to open a doorway from the Great Darkness into existence, bypassing the Overvoid completely. So what does that mean in scaling? What does that mean objectively in scaling? It means that even if the Great Darkness was above the light, which is the Overvoid, which I don't believe it was, then the Great Darkness couldn't do anything to the Overvoid. It couldn't do anything to it. It couldn't bypass it. It needed a cheat sheet. It needed a portal somehow made inside of itself, and then it would slither through this tunnel and end up inside of existence, below the Overvoid, inside of existence. Makes no sense. So comic scalers often don't apply logic to their own counter arguments. They don't really care. They just hope to God that you accept whatever they said. They're not going to apply any logic to it. And then we can even run back to Final Crisis, where Nil is floating in the Overvoid, and it says that Mandrak is building a bridge from the void to existence, and he's crawling up from the darkness to feed on the light. Well, it's not a reference to the Overvoid. Mandrak is not crawling up from the dark to feed on the Overvoid. The Overvoid was always there. The Overvoid was even more transcendent than Mandrak after the War of Transcendence, where they just kept getting stronger between Cosmic Armor Superman and Mandrak for infinite volumes of time without meaning. It became a meaningless thing at a certain point, and the Overvoid still one-shot even the idea of Mandrak. So Mandrak at no point, and the Nil Monitors at no point, would be oversight over the entire light of the Overvoid. That's not how the lore goes, because the light doesn't mean the overvoid. The light means the light of creations. It can mean any creation. The comic book even says that the light that Marnovu gave to Dr. Light was a light too. So again, just read the comics for yourself. Try not to listen to people who manipulate information. These comics are wonderful. Joshua Williams did a great job with this. It's just that comic scalers and other wikis and forums butchered everything that he tried to do. They did the same thing with Scott Snyder's Metal series. They butchered everything. They butchered Doomsday Clock. Nobody listened to Dr. Manhattan tell you that the Dark Multiverse was a byproduct of Earth Zero. They didn't care. You never see these images anywhere online. So do your own research. Try not to listen to scalers. Try to listen to only the content creators who are trying to give you all of the good information and actually read out the panels for you live on a video.